The man who invented secularism, George Jacob Holyoake's fight against sacred power. Section 1. One sentence about God, 6 months in prison, one new word, a whole new way to think about public life. This is not fiction. This is the life of George Jacob Holyoake, a working-class agitator, a company operative organizer, a freethinker, and the man who coined the word secularism. If you have ever heard the word secular in a debate about schools, laws, or the state, you are already standing inside the world he helped to build. Section 2. The religious order he challenged. When Holyoake was born in 1817, England was officially a Christian nation. The Church of England was not just a spiritual body, it was tied to the state. Bishops sat in the House of Lords. Religious tests blocked non-Anglicans from universities, from public offices, from many positions of influence. The Bible was treated as the foundation of morality, law, and education. To question this order was not just a private opinion, it was a public risk. You could lose your job, your reputation, and in some cases, your freedom. This was the atmosphere in which George Jacob Holyoake opened his eyes. Section 3. Born into the industrial poor. Holyoake was born in Birmingham, an industrial city of smoke, metal, and noise. His father was a whitesmith, a skilled metal worker, who finished and polished iron. His mother made horn buttons at home. They were not beggars, but they were far from secure. Their lives depended on physical labor and small wages. Holyoake attended an elementary school and a Sunday school. He learned basic reading and writing. Like many working-class children, he left school early to help support his family. He worked in a foundry. He learned long hours, hard physical work, and the feeling of standing on the lower rungs of a rigid class system. Section 4. Discovering the power of ideas. Despite limited formal education, Holyoake developed a deep hunger for knowledge. He read whenever he could. He listened to public lectures. He followed debates about politics, religion, and social reform. He discovered that the world he had been told was fixed and sacred was being questioned by living human beings. He saw that ideas could challenge power, that arguments could shake institutions, that words could open doors or close them. Section 5. Entering the Owenite world. In this period, Holyoake encountered the ideas of Robert Owen. Owen was a factory owner who became a social reformer. He argued that character is formed by circumstances, that poverty and vice are not simply personal sins. They are the result of bad social conditions. He believed that society could be improved through cooperation, education, and better living standards. He set up model communities and cooperative experiments. His message was radical. For a religious age, do not wait for heaven. Improve life on earth. Holyoake was drawn to this practical vision. He joined Owenite circles. He attended socialist meetings. He tried to become a teacher, but his socialist views blocked his path. So he chose another route. He became a social missionary, a traveling lecturer, speaking in halls, chapels, and open spaces. He explained how society might be rebuilt on justice, cooperation, and reason. Section 6. From uncertain belief to open unbelief. At first, Holyoake did not break completely with Christianity. He moved gradually from doubt to disbelief. He met other freethinkers. He worked with Charles Southwell, who helped establish an openly atheist paper, The Oracle of Reason. Southwell attacked Christianity directly. He was prosecuted and imprisoned for blasphemy. Holyoake saw that religion in England was not just a private comfort. It was backed by law, by courts, by punishment. When Southwell went to prison, Holyoake volunteered to edit The Oracle of Reason. During his absence, he wrote more boldly. He criticized religious authority. He rejected the Bible as a final rule of life. Whatever remnant of Christianity he had left fell away. For him, this was not just a private loss of faith. It was a political realization. If the state can jail you for your words about God, then religion is a tool of power. Section 7. The Cheltenham Lecture and the Dangerous Answer. In May 1842, Holyoake traveled to visit Southwell in prison. On the way, he stopped in the town of Cheltenham to give a public lecture. At the Mechanics' Institute, the lecture itself was on social and political topics. In the discussion afterwards, someone in the audience asked him about God and the support of the clergy. Holyoake answered honestly. He said he did not believe in the Christian God. He rejected the authority of the Bible. He added a sharp line. He suggested that the deity should be put on half pay. In simple terms, why should the poor keep paying for a God who does not clearly help them? He said he fled the Bible as a viper and revolted at the touch of a Christian. It was a joke, a criticism, and a direct challenge to religious privilege. The authorities did not laugh. Section 8 Blasphemy Trial in Prison. Holyoake was arrested and charged with blasphemy, not for violence, not for theft, not for conspiracy, for words. In court, his statements about God and the clergy were treated as a serious crime. He was convicted and sentenced to 6 months in Gloucester Prison, 6 months in prison, for a sentence about God. In prison, he was not treated as a harmless eccentric. He was pressured to recant. He was urged to return to faith. He was told stories about other radicals who had supposedly changed their minds. He was visited by the radical publisher Richard Carlile. Authorities had claimed that Carlile had died in horror and recanted his principles. Holyoake discovered that this story was false. Another lesson: power will lie to protect itself. Holyoake did not recant. He endured his sentence. He came out with a clearer understanding. In a country that called itself Christian and civilized, you could be locked up for using your mind in public if your thoughts challenged religion. Section 9 Back in the struggle. Press and public opinion. After prison, Holyoake did not disappear. He settled in London. He founded and edited progressive newspapers, most notably The Reasoner. He fought against taxes on newspapers, the taxes on knowledge that made printed information expensive. For ordinary people, Holyoake became a central figure in the movement for a cheap press. He wanted ordinary people to read, to think, to argue, without financial barriers. He believed that a democracy of ideas requires access to information. If only the rich can afford newspapers, then only the rich control the story. Section 10 The cooperative experiments. At the same time, Holyoake threw himself into the cooperative movement. In 1844, he presided at the opening of the Rochdale Company Operative Store. In this store, workers and consumers shared ownership and decision-making. They sold honest goods at fair prices. They divided surplus among members. They kept clear accounts. The Rochdale model became a symbol and a blueprint for county operative societies across Britain. Holyoake later wrote the history of the Rochdale pioneers. For him, this was not separate from his free thought. Economic justice and intellectual freedom were connected. If people are crushed by poverty, overwork, and ignorance, they cannot fully exercise freedom of thought. Cooperation was secular ethics in action. Section 11 Why atheist was not enough. By the early 1850s, Holyoake was widely known as a freethinker and critic of religion, but he was dissatisfied with the word atheist. Atheist only described what a person does not believe. It said nothing about how to live, how to organize society, how to make decisions in public life. Holyoake wanted a term that pointed forward, not just backward. He wanted a word for a positive, practical, this worldly ethic, so he coined a new word: secularism. Around 1851, he began to call himself a secularist, and he developed a philosophy to match the name. Section 12 His formal definition of secularism. Holyoake did not leave the meaning of secularism vague. He defined it clearly as a code of duty pertaining to this life, founded on considerations purely human. In simple language, secularism is about how we should act in this world. It uses human reason, human experience, and human needs as its guide. It does not appeal to supernatural authority, to revelation, or to sacred texts. As final proof, Holyoake emphasized 3 main ideas. First, reason and evidence as guides. Our actions especially in public life, should be guided by reason, evidence, and experience, not by revelation, not by sacred authority, not by claims that cannot be tested or discussed. Second, human welfare in this life. The aim of ethics and policy should be the improvement of human life, here and now, reducing suffering, increasing well-being, expanding knowledge and opportunity. Third, neutral public institutions, schools, laws, and governments should not depend on any religious creed. The state should not enforce any faith. People of all beliefs and of no belief should be able to live together as equals. This was Holyoake's secularism, not a private creed, a public method. Section 13. Secularism is not hatred of religion. Holyoake was often attacked as an enemy of religion, but his secularism was not defined by hatred. He did not say, "Every believer is my opponent." He said, "The state must not take sides." In matters of belief, he argued that a person can be religious and still support secularism if they accept that the law should not force their religion on others, and that public decisions should be made on grounds that everyone can examine. In this sense, secularism was a framework for coexistence. It protected the freedom of believers and non-believers alike by keeping religious authority out of the machinery of the state. Section 14. Morality without divine command. One of Holyoake's most important contributions was his insistence that morality does not need divine command to stand. He saw a danger if right and wrong depend only on what is said to be God's will, then morality can be changed. Whenever someone claims a new revelation or a new interpretation, he wanted a more stable foundation. He proposed a simple test for actions. Asked, does this action increase human well-being? Does it reduce unnecessary harm? Does it respect the dignity and freedom of others? If yes, then it is morally good, even if no scripture mentions it. If no, then it is morally bad, even if someone tries to justify it with a verse. Holyoake knew that religious texts contain both noble and cruel passages. He refused to accept that cruelty becomes good just because it is old or called sacred. For him, every rule, religious or not, must be tested by its effect on real human lives. Section 15. Education and the battle for minds. Holyoake understood that whoever controls education controls the future. In his time, churches had deep influence over schools. He saw how this influence could be used to shape minds into obedience. If children are taught that questioning is sin, that doubt is rebellion, that one book contains all truth, then they grow up less able to challenge injustice. Holyoake wanted schools that teach how to think, not what to think. He wanted children to learn science, history, logic, and ethics without being told that one religion must rule their minds. He believed that parents are free to teach their own beliefs at home, but the state should not act as the missionary of any church. Section 16. Oaths, law and conscience. Another area where Holyoake pushed for change was the law of oaths. In 19th century England, many legal and public acts required religious oaths, swearing before God. For non-believers, this was a trap. Either they swore in a way they did not believe, or they were excluded from full participation. Holyoake argued for the right to make a simple affirmation instead of a religious oath. He wanted the law to recognize that conscience does not belong only to believers. This struggle was part of the broader secularist effort to remove religious tests from public life. Section 17. Free speech and blasphemy laws. Holyoake's own imprisonment for blasphemy made him a lifelong critic of laws that protect religion from criticism. He argued that truth does not need legal shields. If a belief is strong, it can face questions. If a belief cannot survive open debate, then it is weak, no matter how sacred it is called. For Holyoake, blasphemy laws were not about protecting God. They were about protecting institutions and authorities from challenge. He wanted a society where ideas, including religious ideas, could be examined, without fear of prison. Section 18 County operation is lived ethics. Holyoake's secularism was not only about arguments, it was also about practice. He believed that cooperation, people joining together to own and manage their workplaces and shops, was a practical expression of secular ethics. In cooperative societies, power is shared, decisions are made by members, profits are distributed more fairly. This, for Holyoake, was morality in action, no appeal to divine command, no claim of sacred authority, just people organizing to reduce exploitation and increase fairness. He wrote histories of the cooperative movement. He helped spread its methods. He saw cooperation as a way to give ordinary people more control over their lives. Section 19 Writing his principles. Holyoake did not leave his ideas scattered. He wrote them down in works like The Principles of Secularism and his autobiography, 60 Years of an Agitator's Life. He explained how his experiences, poverty, radical politics, blasphemy prosecution, journalism, cooperation, shaped his philosophy. He presented secularism not as a sudden invention, but as the result of long reflection on real struggles. He wanted a clear, workable, this worldly code of duty. He wanted a name for a way of life that respects reason, experience, and human welfare, without leaning on supernatural claims. Section 20 How his secularism differs from other models. Holyoake's secularism was not identical to every later form of secularism. He did not simply copy French-style laicite. He did not call for aggressive removal of religion from private life. He focused on public neutrality. He allowed that individuals could keep their faith as long as the state did not enforce it. His secularism was also tied to social reform, cheap newspapers, cooperatives, education, legal oaths. For him, secularism was not a cold theory, it was a practical program for a fairer society. Section 21 Legacy and modern relevance. George Jacob Holyoake died in 1906. After a long life of agitation and writing, he did not see all the changes he worked for, but his influence continued. The word secularism spread into political and philosophical debates, movements for separation of church and state, for secular education, for freedom of conscience, found in his work a language and a framework. Today, when people argue about whether schools should teach religion, whether laws should be based on scripture, whether the state should favor one faith, they are, often without knowing it, walking through territory that Holyoake helped map. Section 22 Distilling his message. If we compress Holyoake's secularism into a few direct lines, it sounds like this: base public life on what can be tested, not on what cannot be questioned. Use reason, evidence, and human experience as your guides. Aim to improve human welfare in this world, not to win rewards in an unseen one. Do not give any church or scripture a throne over law, education, or science. Do not say that morality needs heaven. Say that morality needs empathy, fairness, and clear thinking. Do not fear questions about belief. Fear systems that forbid those questions. You are allowed to build your ethics without God. You are allowed to ask for reasons, not just verses. You are allowed to want a world where no one is punished for thinking. Section 23 Outro. A call, not just a story. George Jacob Holyoake was a real person, an English working-class radical, a freethinker, a cooperator, a journalist, and the man who coined the word secularism. He went to prison for a sentence about God. He spent his life trying to make sure that future generations would not have to. His secularism is not just no God, it is no human authority beyond criticism, no book beyond evidence, no church above the law. Only one final test: does this make human life more just, more free, more humane? If yes, then build it. If no, then change.